A24 did not help because they put out a lot of marketing that was like, which side are you on type thing.
Yeah.
100%.
There was no indication in any of the marketing that this was a movie about 4 journalists on a road trip through desolate parts of America, exploring like what it means to experience and keep record of events as they are happening. And halfway through seeing the movie, I was like, oh my God, it's good.
Welcome back to the Breakroom for another installment of our well-known and totally done before series, Creators on Couches Having Conversations. I'm Evan, producer here at the Breakroom, and joining me today are two of my friends from the YouTube channel Wisecrack, Michael Burns and Helen Floersh. Thank you guys so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us. We are genuinely excited to be here, right?
Yeah, this is an honor. I hate working on Fridays, so it was really great. And this is cool too because sometimes I find reasons to not work that are not like this. But in this instance, I got to say, like, guys, I got to go make some content to expand the brand.
Yes, yeah, we're expanding the brand. All the brands.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody's brand expanding.
I mean, this is obviously like working, but it's like,
Yeah.
Are you really working when you're with your friends talking about content?
And like, look at this set. It's amazing.
Incredible. I see it every day. I'm sick of it.
Sick of it?
Sick of it.
Sick of it.
When I was first thinking about this movie, watching it, I knew I wanted to have a conversation with you guys about it. We do a Breakroom movie review for a lot of the movies that come out, this was a really interesting movie to unpack. It's not a movie that immediately comes to mind when you think like new Rockstars or the Breakroom. Like it's not like a Marvel or Star Wars thing, and it's something I want to talk to you guys specifically about, especially based on the work that you guys have done on the channel, that I used to do on the channel. And yeah, I think it's super interesting, so I can't wait to talk about it. Before we get into your thoughts about our general thoughts, I wanted to give a quick summary about the film. In case you haven't watched it or you're thinking about watching it, here's like a no spoiler kind of summary. Basically, it's what the trailers have told you. The US has fallen into a civil war in the not so distant future. We don't really quite know how far away it is, but it follows a team of journalists who are trying to interview the president as the president and the Union forces are losing the fight. And that's basically the summary. It's a road trip movie turned into a war movie. A lot of interesting ideas at play. So how did you guys feel about the movie?
Well, I thought the point was we're talking about the Civil War and we're debating it, and Helen's representing the South and defending that position. I was going to defend it. Okay.
No.
So the movie Civil War,
Yeah.
which we're here to talk about. I mean, I'll say this, and I'll pass the ball to Tennessee's own over here.
Helen's about to leave.
You guys.
I'll say this:
Continue.
when this movie was first, and I think we probably all experienced this, when the trailer dropped and it was advertised on social media, it immediately got roasted. People thought it looked very stupid because I think we all thought that it was going to be some weird imagining of the geopolitical stakes of an actual American Civil War in a contemporary context. A24 did not help because they put out a lot of marketing that was like, which side are you on type thing.
Yeah.
100%.
There was no indication in any of the marketing that this was a movie about 4 journalists on a road trip through desolate parts of America, exploring like what it means to experience and keep record of events as they are happening.
Yeah.
And because of that, like going into it, and I'll be honest, Evan, before you brought, up doing this, I didn't know if I was going to rush out to see it.
Yeah.
And halfway through seeing the movie, I was like, oh my God, it's good.
Yeah.
And by the end of the movie, I had to realize, and I had to talk myself into it because I expected to dislike it, that I liked it a lot. And everything I liked about it is completely different from the stuff I think a lot of people think the movie's about.
100%. Yeah.
So without, I guess, giving too much away,
Yeah.
I'm surprisingly positive about this movie.
Yeah. What'd you think, Helen?
I'm surprisingly positive about it too. I was in the camp that watched the trailer and was like, this looks ridiculous. This is not what we need right now in America. And I had been kind of in jest saying that I wasn't going to go see it. I have a lot of respect for Alex Garland, so ultimately I knew I would go see this movie, but it was... I feel like it would be a stretch to say that I enjoyed it, not because it wasn't a great movie from a craft perspective, but first because I had a candle burning at home, and the whole time was kind of in the back of my mind, like, am I going to go back and everything is going to be
But that's what the movie
ashes?
feels like, though. It's already an anxiety-inducing experience.
Right, which,
so that you had a real thing.
I mean, I would argue that perhaps everyone, when they go see a movie like this, should leave a candle burning at home to just like amp up.
Or just like turn the oven on where just the gas is running.
Right, exactly. No, but it kind of messed me up. Did it mess you guys up? Did you feel like you needed to play Tetris afterward a little bit to like, quell the
Tetris specifically?
Yeah, because it like helps with PTSD. Not to say this movie gives you PTSD, but it was.
Well, I see a lot of movies solo, and I saw this one with a friend at a theater that has a bar, and never was I so happy to have a smart friend who's like a filmmaker, so I knew he would have great takes on this, to sit there and responsibly drink one low alcohol American craft brew, and discuss the film while a trivia night happened in the background. Because I needed to unpack the film with someone. I was glad I had someone to do that with.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm very much in the same boat, which is maybe boring for this type of video, but like I surprisingly liked it. I agree with all the points where it did feel, I think a word that I was using prior to the film and continued using was, and I'm now turning a corner on it, was like the word irresponsible, right? Like it feels odd to be like, look at this movie that doesn't feel so far away in the future. It is presenting a situation that could happen, right? I mean, we can't get into it, like the realisticness of it all, like why do California and Texas join forces, blah, 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 right? But it did feel, I was like, man, this is a movie that feels it feels odd to like put this out into the world. But then when I watched it and seeing like the stance it took and how it was about journalism and what happens when you actually experience these things and the stance that you have to take, especially as someone who is very interested in photography and has and
You're a good photographer too.
Yeah. Shout out to Evan's photography.
True, he really
it's
is.
Very good.
Thank you. But yeah, I mean, I have qualms about just taking pictures of people on the street sometimes, right? Because it's like, I don't know, they don't know how I'm going to use the image. Like, if I go up and ask them and like, oh, hey, you look like, this is so weird, but can I take your picture? And go back and do the thing that you would, right?
Yeah.
Like, then it creates this setup and blah, blah, blah. And so there's this interesting like thought about just like the way that they are just capturing things, but then the movie gives it a different layer to it. It's like, well, how do they feel about things they're capturing? We can get into that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I liked it a lot. It's very weird that A24 was like, all right, you know what? Let's use these AI generated posters because we didn't shoot any footage of like, American forces storming American landmarks besides like the DC stuff, and we can't blow all of that stuff. So let's do like, I don't know if you guys have seen it, like the soldiers like in the what's that place called in San Francisco, Dashiell? Palace of Fine Arts.
Yeah.
Like they're like in the lake or whatever.
Yeah, they have one in Chicago on the river.
Yeah.
With the swan boat.
Oh, the Echo
Swan
Park.
Boat too.
That's
Echo Park.
That was
That's
Echo
right.
Park.
Yeah. So it's
Well, no, and that's there's kind of a whole other discussion on has a studio or a marketing firm so like dropped the ball like this, because I truly think many people will not see this movie because of that.
yeah.
And if you're about to click away, we're not sponsored by A24, are you?
No.
I'm not. Are you?
No.
I'm not either. Watch it. Like even if you saw the advertisement, like, this looks butt. It is not butt. It's really good.
It's really good, and we can get into this a little bit later, but some of the arguments around it being political and like the questions that should it have been political and that kind of thing. In some sense, I'm kind of wondering if it might as well have been, because I think the marketing turned off such a huge portion of the audience who would have seen it otherwise, or who might have seen it otherwise rather, that it didn't make a difference. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I guess like, do you think more people are going to choose to watch the film now out of like morbid curiosity, or do you think there's like more of the population just is like, you know what, I'm like just never gonna watch this because of what I think this is about?
This is gonna sound stupid, but I was just reading this New York Times article this morning that kind of mentioned this. It needs a really good TikTok campaign. Okay, like what was the movie? It just came out with
TikTokers
Glenn
are gonna
Howerton and
hate
Sydney
this.
Sweeney.
Oh, God.
Anyone But You?
Glenn Powell. Yeah, but yeah.
Glenn Powell, sorry, not Howerton.
Now I'm just imagining that whole movie with Glenn Howard.
Oh, can you imagine? Yeah. Now, I mean, I kind of like. I'm down for that remake. Actually, I would probably go see that.
Oh my God.
But
shouts to Sydney Sweeney for killing wokeness.
With her boobs.
Yeah.
She is beautiful.
The press that took
great.
down the woke infrastructure.
Oh gosh.
Oh my. But anyway, maybe I don't know. What do you think?
I almost think that there's like more. There's more reasons for people not to see this movie than to see it based on the marketing. Because let's say you're someone who is, you know, left-leaning or something. Right? This is going to be some stupid neoliberal imagining of blah blah blah. If you're super right-wing, you're going to be like, this is going to be some woke crap about da 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 da. If you're someone who wants like a careful political take, you're going to say the marketing for this makes it look overblown, hyperbolic, whatever it might be. So I think they set themselves up with all these reasons for you not to see it, rather than giving you reasons to see it. And I know I've talked to folks who were just like, you know, like people especially that have like a pass to a movie theater. They're just like, I guess I'll see this. It's going to be ridiculous, but I'll go watch it like the way I want to watch a train wreck or something.
Right.
I guess that is like gets into the first big question I want to talk about. It was like, do you think nobody really wants to see an American Civil War put on screen in this way, right? Like, or at least what the marketing is saying, right? That's what we're saying is like they'll be turned off because like, is it too real? Is it just too morbid to have that like out in the world?
I mean, to me, honestly, I was laughing earlier, but the trailer scared me. Yeah. And I did not want to, it felt too close to home. And that was one of the reasons I did not want to see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think especially during an election year, a lot of people don't want to imagine, you know, a film that takes real political anxieties and some of the political bifurcation happening in America right now, where more and more it's like, feels like people have to honor one magical belief system that they're willing to live or die for or something like that. Imagining that pushed to its full extreme is not fun. I don't think anyone wanted to watch like a movie that's, you know, January 6th, but if they won. Shouts to them though. Shouts to the Q shaman.
Maybe he's watching.
He's on the stream right now.
Okay, he did one cool thing though. He went to jail and he like protested because they wouldn't give him vegan food. I think that was so funny. But I think that like no one wants to see that. And then I also think for a lot of people that maybe like movies, we're just like, there's no way to make it good. I think that's the issue. Like, how do you, especially in the context of a massive nation with so much political and ideological diversity, depending on where you are, how do you, in 100 to 200 minutes, really show us that?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Without it also being just like just monologuing about the politics of it, right?
Right. You'd have to take a really taken angle. I mean, I don't know. We could sit here and imagine ways it could have been done well, but it would have all been very different.
But it's hard to imagine. And like you were saying, Evan, like I think if you do it that way, you have so many scenes where someone's just like, I remember the day that Texas first blah, blah, blah. And then California did blank. And it's just like, oh, so I'm just going to watch you guys talk about the thing. You know? And I don't want to see a movie like masturbatorially interact with its own Wikipedia page.
Totally.
You want to see people live in it. And I think that they did Alex Garland did something brilliant in avoiding that.
I agree.
And then it's also like if you did have it be, if it was a movie that showed an American Civil War in the way we might have imagined it, then it's like, who's seeing that? What do they want out of it? Like,
and I think like there was so Eric Voss on New Rockstars channel did a breakdown of it, and he one of the top comments was like, they probably avoided talking about how it all happened so that California and Texas joined so that they could avoid like the blue state, red state of it. And I think it is very interesting that a movie about such a interesting moment in our real lifetime and in a fictional time can be like apolitical in a weird way.
Well, I think there's two things there, right? One is like, people know the adage when you're writing, whether it's like a story or a screenplay or whatever, start in the middle, start when stuff's happening.
Yeah.
And I feel like more and more that does not happen.
Yes.
Because all of our little baby brains need to be told, there was this, then there was this. Here's an 8-minute voiceover that tells you this.
Yeah.
Whereas this movie truly just like starts in the middle of a thing. It does not explain the thing. It does not attempt to give us context. It focuses on the individual experiences of people in it. And I think in doing that, like, it is apolitical in the sense that the movie itself, I don't think has a large-scale political message. I think it is political in so much as it forces you as a person who's watching the movie throughout the film to kind of like feel like you are seen by it. It's a movie about I guess in a way it's a movie about shooting, right? Either shooting people or shooting.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
But in a sense, like, it forces us, if we're not the shooters, shout out to all my shooters, but if you're not a shooter, we are consumers of those shots.
Yes.
Right? And I think it's a movie that forces you at a certain point to directly interact with it and not just be removed from it. And I think there's a point of that movie where you can't help but think, where do these images and things like this happen in my life? What would my reaction be? And then if you're someone who's at all worked in journalism or whatever, then you're forced to think like, ooh. And I think as well, it complicates the idea of journalism's role as that like fourth estate of, that's what they call it, right? The fourth estate?
I think so,
At some point,
Yeah, you're a journalist, right? You would know. But I think it asks interesting questions about the role journalism has. So while the movie isn't incredibly political, I think it forces the audience to ask some interesting political questions.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That was his goal. If you read or watch any interviews with Alex Garland, he does talk about that and how. I mean, when I first watched he talks about how it is. The film, it takes the perspective of journalism, of journalists, right? We are watching these things unfold. And then it is up to you to ask questions, as is literally said in the film itself. By Lee's character, right? Like,
that's like when they released that first clip before the movie was publicly announced, and she's like, "We take pictures so others can ask." Right. I was like, "Oh,
I never saw that beforehand."
Yeah. So when after Kaylee Spaney's character Jesse, is narrowly avoids being shot by that guy, and in their car, right, the four of them are traveling, and she is like she's like, I should have been taking a picture, like I didn't even think about that. And then
I saw it in the movie, I just didn't see it before.
Right. I'm explaining for the audience.
I'm sorry. I thought Evan thought that I didn't actually watch the movie. So I had to be like, I swear to God I did.
Yeah, you watched Captain America Civil War, right?
Okay, I'll be honest. I showed up here today. That is what I'd watch. I had to illegally download the movie Civil War. I watched it on 9 times speed. I took 19 Adderall and I watched it, and I did understand it. Yeah. But I also have thoughts on the way in which generational trauma has affected Tony Stark and his relationship towards violence.
That whole moment is so interesting too. Of just like you watch Kaylee Spaney's character go on this arc, right? Where I think in the first scene too, she asked Kirsten Dunst's character Lee. She says, "Would you have taken a picture of me if I had gotten hit, right, or killed?"
She was like, "If I got shot, if I got killed, would you take a picture?" Yeah.
And then she goes, "What do you think?" Right, and then it's like open-ended, but we kind of infer. And then at the end of the movie, big spoiler, Kirsten Dunst kind of takes a shot for Kaylee Spaney's character and dies, and in that moment, she takes a picture of her dying. Yeah. To kind of
and she gets shot while she's getting shot.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you feel about that arc for either of those characters, or that specific moment in the end?
I mean, it actually really upset me to see, to be honest. Yeah. Well, not necessarily Kaylee Spaney's arc. I appreciated that. I've read, and so maybe my own ideas are adulterated by other people's takes at this point, because I feel like I've read a lot about this movie, but I did see somewhere someone talking about how this kind of postulating as to whether or not that arc was kind of mirroring the way that old school journalism has turned into sensationalist, gets in the way of the shot and puts in, and in doing so puts the old way that is less biased and is more about like standing back and watching history unfold and being the eyes for the world, like lets that die, right, and kills it. I don't know.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
But so there's that take, but I guess I really kind of found myself believing in some of Lee's ideals, and so to see her crumple on the floor that way, and I haven't really been able to shake it out of my head in the end.
Yeah, I think like she has a great quote in the beginning of the movie where she's like, every time I was away at war, I thought I was sending a message home, right, to not do this, and then to be so confronted with the reality so heavily, right, to like be in the White House, to be literally getting shot by the president's forces is like the complete flip on, like flipping that ideals on her head. And also just like disproving like any like American exceptionalism that like comes with that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I think there is that sense that we are used to being the spectators of these things.
Yes.
And we almost treat global conflict and global news as just another form of like exciting content in our lives.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's why so many people like get thrown off when a thing does happen in America, because we're just like, wait, no, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it doesn't happen here.
Here. It's crazy. And I do think, to get back to your initial question, the character arcs of, so it's Lee, and what is Kelly Spain's character?
Oh, it was Jesse.
Jesse, yeah. You see this sort of like this type thing, right? Where you, in a sense, you almost see, there's like a baton passing of Kaylee Spain's Jesse becoming the next one up. But I think there's also this slow dehumanization of Jesse and a rehumanization of Lee.
Yes.
Because early in the film, and in one of the first scenes, Jesse, Kirsten Dunst's character, sees some things happen and is cool as a cucumber. And Jesse is like, oh my God, how can you do this? There's a scene where Jesse sees some stuff that makes her throw up in her lap. And by the end, Kirsten Dunst's character, Lee, is shaking like she's having an anxiety attack.
Finally catches up with her.
It's like all of that anxiety, all of that humanness catches up. And I think it's interesting as well, because at a certain point as a viewer, you're like almost rooting Jesse on. It's like, oh, you're getting after it, you're taking these shots now, you're in it, you see it. But then at the end, it's like this person who was almost your like mama bear figure on this road trip just died saving you, and you are literally running off to get the shot. Because that's what matters.
I mean, even like early on in the movie too, she is taking pictures with Lee in them and taking pictures of Lee, right? It becomes more important for her to see the photographer taking the story, because it's like, oh, instead of like your image is crafting the story, you are seeing how someone else is crafting the story, where they're standing, what they're shooting, how they feel, what they look like, And I think that's so interesting to kind of like talk about photography and like and journalism in that way, especially when you view war photography specifically. Is it an art or is it reporting, right? And a lot of people are just like, what shots is she taking at night? Like, the White House, storming the White House, is like, it's so like she's moving around as like blurry ass pictures.
Well,
and
this
stuff.
is also a movie where like you need to not ask certain questions.
You're gonna suspend a little bit of disbelief.
You need to not ask, where are they taking these? Who are they giving them to? Where are these being printed or reported?
Why are they allowed to get
Don't
that
ask those
close
questions
by the soldiers? But it's like, maybe, I don't know. So
No, I talked to some of my contacts in the military, and they confirmed that that's not how it happens.
Yeah, where they go in and they say, okay, we'll shoot these guys. Everyone rehearses it, and then they bring the press in.
It's like that. Because for those who have not seen the movie yet, there's some scenes where these photographers are literally like over the shoulder of someone with a machine gun, and the soldier's like, okay, when I go left, you come with me. And I'm just like, I don't know if in that moment, if there's any active service people out there, please jump in the chat and let us know if that's real or not. Let us know, where you're at, where you're stationed.
Also, war photographers, please.
If war photographers, let us know. We're ice cream makers, anyone.
I saw someone get destroyed on Reddit being like, as a photographer, I think this is not how it would happen. And people were being like, all right. Like that's how you would shoot this, but it's not how everyone would shoot it.
And I think the person, I'll shout them out so I don't steal their take.
Sure.
My friend Justin Boyd, if you watch this, Justin, thank you. But he made this comment after we saw it that it was more like a fable, and he saw it as like a fable about American political reality and like our relationship to journalism. And when you look at it that way, I feel like a lot of the specifics matter less.
Yeah,
because
100%, 100%.
Oh, yeah.
And I think if you read it like as a fable or as a sort of allegory, then it's like who cares how they're getting the stories to Reuters?
Yeah. I was talking to Brandon about that yesterday, and I was like, I think I would have liked to see them talk to their employer about why it's important to get this image, because who is paying them? And then I was like, no, it would just, all that stuff would just bog down what is already being presented.
So it's kind of boring.
That's
a very boring scene.
Well, they're doing like Zoom calls. They're like, can you hear me?
Well, we got the big scoop. You hear?
Yeah.
Well,
we tapped into the satellite.
Also, too, the movie is 100 minutes, which are 109 minutes, which is awesome. If we see all that crap, it becomes a super huge movie, and we don't need that.
Yeah, and then we'd all be saying, good, but a little shorter.
Yeah.
I don't know where, but
exactly. Do you guys, I guess ethically speaking, I'm curious, do you feel like war photography is inhumane ethically in a way?
I did have that thought early on, because like you see all the flashes to what Lee's like history is, and you see her taking pictures of a guy being lit on fire. It's like, when do you step in, and do you feel like you should step in? It's really tough, right? It's such a it's such an interesting thing where it's like, as a human, I feel like you will want to be, doing the best for humans.
Well, I mean, I think about in America, right? You think about the role of photography during the civil rights movement, and you had people in the northern states who had a sense of what was going on, but I think when they see pictures like from Mississippi after some of like the Freedom Rise and all that sort of stuff, I do think it was at that point in history, it's important to say, this is what's happening, this is what it looks like. And I even think in like instances of some like horrific lynchings and things like that. Because I think people truly didn't know that was happening. I think it truly led to some sort of change in consciousness or whatever. I wonder these days if we can say a lot of photography of war or violence is doing the same. I wonder at what point, because we do have so much access to information, and is there a certain point at which we just know it's happening all the time, so we can be like, for example, Jesse and Lee's parents in Missouri and Colorado, who are just hanging out acting like it's not happening. Because it just becomes a part of like our feeds, our content pipeline, I guess I didn't really answer your question about the... But
no,
I guess
it does.
Like, in cases
though.
I see how it's ethical. In other cases, is it just, this is going to... Like these days, right? I don't think anyone taking pictures in Mississippi in 1962 were like, this is going to get so many impressions.
Right. Exactly. They're not doing it for it's a very different. They're doing it to be the eyes of history and to hold those.
And we know now, like, and this isn't like news, no pun intended, but the people that are on CNN have just been like, oh, we make content. News is a thing we do, but primarily we are trying to get numbers.
I think the role of the war correspondent has changed pretty dramatically since those who are living that history are able to tell the stories themselves with their like live streaming something from Syria, for example, which was I remember seeing this years ago on Periscope of all things, but it's absolutely horrifying. But it feels very different than having someone else aim and shoot as you go through this thing. But I agree with you, like it's out of the context of this kind of modern, I don't know, like rush for likes and various things. It's kind of like it absolutely had a really, really important role.
Well, and don't we see a shift? In the movie, God, I forget the two male characters' names.
So Joel is the driver, and Stanley. Is,
So when Stanley gets got, which sucked, but he went out like a champ. But there's a moment where they're kind of recovering after that at the Western Forces Army base, and we see Lee, and she's looking at her photos of Stanley, and we see her delete them. And I think that's kind of maybe like the start, or maybe like the second phase of the rehumanization of Lee. If anyone wants to make a graphic that's the cover of The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, but with that picture, please do it.
Damn.
But I think at that point, even at that point, she feels like it wouldn't be right to have a photo of this person I worked with when they were dead, and he was a casualty of the conflict. And I think that there was something there where you see the difference. Like, should it be the case that if I'm a photographer like that, I'm comfortable taking pictures of dead people I don't know and publicizing those?
Yeah.
Is it a conflict that when it happens to someone I know, I'm deleting that and don't think that should be in the world?
Right, yeah, and exactly. Where is that line drawn or whatever? Yeah. I feel like we have a lot of other things to talk about, but I did want to open up some chat questions right now.
Yes.
Regular chatter for us, Sarah Hatchadorian asks, what is your headcanon as why Texas and California would team up? I know Alex Garland has kind of answered this already, but I'm curious.
Wait, I don't know if this is, so I don't know his answer, so if I accidentally say something similar to that, I promise I'm not trying to do that, so let me know. Here is how I read it. If someone in DC went full, like, tyrannical fascist, third term, abolishing the FBI, all this sort of stuff, I think at a certain point, that would piss off 2 states that are all about freedom or all about independence or all about their own autonomy, albeit in different ways. And I think that sort of collapsed, because at the end of the day, right, most Texans like America and how the government works and believe in a certain version of democracy. Most Californians believe in that as well. And when you dismantle the very foundation of that, I think the two, and you got to think of it this way as well, if Iowa cared, it's like, cool, Iowa, you know, like, what are you going to do? Like, I think that, so in my headcanon, it's that as democracy collapses, the 2 most powerful states in the nation, which each could be their own nation state, which have resources, which are the states too. When we look at even now, like, where are things produced? Where's the oil? Where's the technology? And I think there's a world where those 2 states could be like, after this, we'll go back to sniping at each other, but like, we are on the same page in this instance. That was my headcanon for that.
I think that was pretty much also Alex Garland's answer.
He basically said it. He's like,
much,
I think he was like, the answer that I saw, because he was like probably bombarded with that question for every interview, he was just like, all right, listen, there's a president who's in their 3rd term. It's a fascistic regime. Like, dismantling the FBI is wild, right? Like, I think, and I truly think that is enough to get 2 states to, like, kind of, you know, set aside their differences, so to speak.
Yeah.
To, like,
and it is the thing where, like, does it matter to enjoy the film? However, like we all said, but there is a way you could, if you need that.
Absolutely.
I know. We were talking about this the other day, but I truly kept thinking. I was like, man, there's so many. Like, how are they just getting supplies to each other? Like, if every other state between them is, I mean, I don't know if you guys like saw this, but it's actually spread up into like 4. There's 4 parts of the U.S.
And they're like, Florida has a thing going on.
Florida's
the Florida like
There's
alliance.
the Maoist, up in the Pacific Northwest or something. When we're talking about.
Did the Midwest do anything cool? Or
no, they're
bowed out?
loyalists. Yeah, they're just.
And then
Oh man.
So.
And then I think the Pacific Northwest tried to like keep their own thing, and then they
would, though.
the Western forces. No,
the Pacific Northwest they would be the region for as long as possible. Like, no, we're out of this. It has nothing to do with us. I'm gonna listen to Modest Mouse. And hang out. And then Florida would definitely do the thing where Florida would want to do stuff, but they would be like, we don't need you guys. We don't want to team up with you.
Well, I think the whole Southeast was broken off into its own thing, which felt pointed a bit, but but anyway.
But yeah, it was a good question.
Curious what other people's headcanon is.
Oh yeah, and then on the topic of seeing the movie, Kobe-Wan Kenobi, one of our regular chatters, was saying, I have AMC A-list, and that's why I watched it. I wanted to see an American Civil War and the political stuff behind that, and I didn't have anything else to do. Yeah, it does seem like it might be one of those movies that people come around to, as opposed to, especially as word of mouth kind of like changes. You know?
Well, you can imagine this one too. Like, I think, not to give any free press to anyone, but I think A24 has a deal with Max now, or something like that.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I mean, this is a movie. You could imagine, like, 4, 5, 6 months, if that hits streaming, you could see a lot of people.
That's true.
Watching this movie at that point.
Oh
definitely.
And people would be like, you know what? Maybe pretty cool.
And
also, it wouldn't be as loud at home though. It was pretty loud.
See it in theaters if you can.
It
was gorgeous.
Yeah.
too.
It was so beautiful.
We haven't even talked about the cinematography yet.
It
was
cinematography
beautiful.
was fantastic.
Yeah. Also, Dashiell and I were talking about this yesterday, but like the way that like anytime Lee is kind of like zoning out and you see like the chromatic aberration, like the rainbow tint fringes on the images.
I'm glad you said that because I didn't know the language to describe it.
Yeah, and I'm even not 100% sure if it's chromatic aberration.
It sounds good.
It's close.
It's close.
But yeah, it's just like because those are the moments where she starts being the most human in a weird way, and it's like it's also, you could read it as like it's the prettiest like it's like seeing this life in this like kind of like type of thing, you know.
It also just made it so much more sickening because the cinematography is so beautiful. Like the U.S. is a beautiful country. Like it really is. Like aesthetically, it is.
Burns
you look like
agree.
you're not. She
Burns
doesn't agree, but I think it is.
I had some friends that thought this is a beautiful country so much that they went to the Capitol.
Oh God! No, that's not where
Burns really filling in the January 6th spot today, which means nothing to you guys.
No, I think you're totally right, and I do think you have that juxtaposition in the film when they're like driving around, and it is like beautiful rolling hills, everything is great. Oh, there's guys hanging from the bridge.
These guys, yeah. Also, I was wondering. I thought I might be picking up on this, but maybe I was just imagining. I feel like there was just like remakes of some iconic war shots in general in this film, but again, like the hanging from the bridge wasn't that a shot from?
Oh, I'm sure.
Or, I don't remember. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody in the chat knows if I'm picking
there was
up
definitely
something
people
that's
hung from bridges in Sicario, which is fictional, but yeah, I mean, it's also
it
real.
could have been an homage to Sicario. Probably not though.
Yeah,
or maybe no. But
every movie should have to have one homage to Sicario.
No.
That should be a rule in cinema.
But it's just leaving Emily Blunt behind. It's like, no, you can't go on this one. Just like the female character is like stuck, not being able to participate in the last.
I want Adam McKay in his next film to have to do an homage to Sicario.
Oh God.
I like it.
This is an interesting question, especially based on stuff we've talked about today. Sarah Hatcherdorn asks, "Is this a movie someone could watch just to have on casually, or does it require and force you to think?" Because sometimes I just want to turn my brain off in a movie.
I don't think it's a casual movie.
No, I don't think so.
It's like listening to like late stage. It's like listening to Radiohead's Kid A to like hang out at the beach.
Yeah, don't do that.
Tony Bagels, I think maybe coming from the Wisecrack stream, said, "I like the movie a lot, but the more I think on it, the more I think his story and idea is flawed. There's an absurd amount of both sides, and hard to answer with his question without more info." Interesting. I don't know if like it's necessarily both sidesing in the sense that it's like trying to be like, here is a person trying to take trying to document this event in a neutral way. I don't know.
The two instances of the film where I guess you could argue there's maybe both sidesism. I think there's one line where the Stanley character says something to the effect of like, people have more in common than they realize, or something like that. One of those like lines. And then there's another scene, probably my favorite chunk of the film, when they're in the weird Christmas Fantasyland road thing, and the sniper shootout happens, and the reporter dude guy is like trying to figure out like, what side are you on? What are you doing? And they're like, that guy's trying to kill us. We're trying to kill him. And you could read that as saying like, in a sense, maybe like both sides are equally kind of like nihilistic or empty in what they're doing. Another way to read that is just saying like, often that's what things we turn into these grand conflicts boil down to. Yeah. But I think, I can see, I don't agree, but I see where that's coming from. Yeah. I just think the problem is, if Garland wanted to explicitly avoid that, he would have had to say too much. Yeah, or just like, it would have had to, does the movie work better if this is a fictional country? Like, I mean, like Sokovia.
Yeah, like Sokovia, yeah. really turn it on for the normal audience.
What? I'm trying to, I want to...
No, that's true.
I'm staring at Ant-Man's helmet. Like, what am I going to do? Not occasionally bring the stuff up?
And the X-Men cabinet behind me.
I keep looking, and then I'm like thinking about recent episodes of X-Men 97 in my head. Talk about a civil war. Yeah, I guess it's just one of those hard eggs to crack, because I would love a version of this film if someone was able to give us some of the politics in a way that didn't weigh it down, and didn't feel forced, and didn't feel both sidesy, and didn't feel like just some boring neo-lib take. But I don't know how you would do it.
I don't
know either. And that's why I think I appreciate the approach so much, right? Just becomes like, how are we, like you said earlier, what is our relationship with these images, especially when they are at our doorstep, right? Yeah.
I think some of those scenes also, I mean, for example, the one that you mentioned about how when they're we have the sniper and they have the folks in the Christmas Wonderland shooting at him and they're shooting at each other. I think some of that is just kind of a comment on the I'm going to say this word wrong, banality of war. Like, and Civil War specifically. Like,
I don't think you said that word wrong, by
didn't
the way.
I? Oh, great. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, super. I do often pronounce things incorrectly. But in this instance, it felt kind of like that case as well as the Jesse Plemons case, because we don't have context.
Yeah.
It kind of felt like this is showing how, in the midst of chaos, and especially in a civil war, people who want to play these kinds of war games, these militias, right? Like this is what they do. This is what they will do. And I think that made it very visceral and real for me because, I mean, I did grow up in the South, and like, Tennessee's a lovely, beautiful place, but there are definitely people there who they're not really over the first Civil War.
Can you name some of them? And
No.
Look in the camera.
I think I won't do that, but. And it's just in general, like the mythos of it still lives on.
Yeah.
And so I think that there are times when if I don't know, it just felt like there are folks who would be very opportunistic should something like that arise.
And the Jesse Plemons character and their little crew, who's digging a mass grave in the background the entire time that scene is happening, I think gets at that. The way in which there's totally an opportunism around this stuff.
Absolutely.
Did you guys think that he was part of one side, or he was just doing his own thing?
Well, in the trailer, you think that the thing that he's saying that he is part of one side.
Yeah.
Like you absolutely do.
Yeah.
And but when you see it in the film, no, I didn't think so. I thought he was.
Well, because I think you think about how big
of a
America
situation.
is, and I think the movie's imagining like there's certain pockets of the country where as law collapses around them, no one's going there. Like there's zones because our country's so friggin' big.
Yeah.
And then that leads to people like that being able to be like, cool, like I'm in charge now of Allegheny County or whatever that is. Shouts to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, that was what a scene. Oh yeah.
What a
So,
scene. God.
I guess I feel like we've been kind of like filleting the movie a little bit. So to
yeah.
throw some critical energy in for those in the chat who are just like thirsty for blood.
Yeah.
I think there's a world where like some of the character development was a little
Totally.
and often on a road trip movie especially, classic example of this, the movie Road Trip, you see it's a good movie, shouts to Tom Green, but you don't like, I think in the archetypal platonic version of the road trip film, we have our group of friends, they go on a journey, via the journey everyone has some sort of character transformation and they're challenged, and by the end of it they're this new person, yada yada yada. And at the end of it, and maybe this is the point, right? I think that our two surviving members of our gang are just like even more who they were, like taking full form.
Yeah.
And what's the, I keep forgetting.
Joel.
Joel. Like Joel's just like all in. Like this guy.
Yeah.
And it's set up pretty clearly that Lee is like his bud. They work together, all that stuff. She just dies, and he is in there. And then the scene at the end where before they shoot the president, that moment, it's like, no, not yet, not yet. I need a quote. And Nick Offerman says,
please don't kill
him.
him.
And he just goes, that'll do, and walks away.
And he doesn't even take out an audio recorder. That's
he
like,
just was a hero by
killed
himself.
me.
Yeah.
I was like, bro, like you could say anything, make it up. Like, you can lie. No one who's gonna corroborate it. Like they'll say
His
it.
last words were,
Yeah.
I want my baby back, baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, but I do think it kind of, I guess, and this is the part that I think, in one sense, maybe characters aren't developed enough. In another sense, maybe the question is, why do we facilitate this stuff, right? Because if that happened, we would all want to see those pictures. The moment they hit social media, it would be everywhere. We would consume the hell out of them. And I think that even in that instance, you wonder, is what they're doing contributing to democracy? Or is it just contributing to a sense of spectacle? Is it making media out of these events? Or, like Lee says earlier in the film, in documenting this, is it a warning for the Reconstruction era?
And how much are like, with like you said earlier, like how often we see like such real and visceral images like will that have any more weight than anything else?
Like,
right?
I mean, think like what have you guys done lately? You know, what have I done lately? We see horrific images all the time.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Maybe like post about some stuff or say like I feel bad, or
Yeah.
if we're really after it, you know, donate a little coin here or there, show up at a march.
exactly.
But like in general, it just all feeds into our one like tube where all this it all comes through the same tube. So whether it's our favorite cartoon or a video game or a blog or a podcast or a wonderful stream hosted by the incomparable Evan Yee, or you know, horrific war images, it kind of all feels lumped together. And I think there's something about watching a movie about that. It can leave you thinking stuff. I mean, it almost, in a weird way, it leaves you feeling kind of similarly in a vague way to the end of Killers of the Flower Moon, if anyone stayed awake long enough to watch that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, 100%. Yeah.
Well, in what way? Like, do you mean like nauseous or like that's?
Well, no,
that's
because
like...
in Civil War, so after the credits, Martin Scorsese comes out and Jack White's there. No, but so in the sense in which, like, I think that you know the monologue we get from Scorsese at the end of the Killers of the Flower Moon calls like the audience into question, but calls the act of filmmaking into question, and especially asks like, what does it mean when we are telling the stories of vulnerable people? What does it mean when we're sharing images? From those people, and I think in a sense, obviously, we wouldn't think of the Nick Offerman character as like a vulnerable person, but in general, in that movie, like, what does it mean when dead bodies in the street are used in that way? What does it mean when it's all reduced to that, and then we just kind of consume it in the same way? And I think this is, you know. And we're going to stay on for 2 more hours and do Killers of the Flower Moon now. Yeah. But in that movie, you kind of get the sense where it's like, hey, we watched this movie and we're all like, oh, that's so horrible that happened. Okay. Shrug.
Yeah.
That's true. That is kind of, and that goes back to what we were kind of talking about earlier about the evolution of the role of war journalism and therefore the ethics of it, right? Like it's shifted now because everything is, we are desensitized to these images in some way.
But would you say not even like war journalism, right? It's sort of like, in general these days with journalism, it's just it's a fine line between when you read something. I'm generally curious in the chat if people have like journalists they like or sources they like. I'd love to hear about this, but you know, where is the line between spectacle and imagery and hyperbolic language for the sake of grabbing our attention and keeping us inactive, and those who are telling stories, whether with words or images, that aim to educate us, make us more informed, and challenge our assumptions.
Yeah.
And I think that the movie maybe explores, you know, that tension, and maybe we even see that's like, and I know you said this before, but one of the big lines in the movie is when Lee says something to the effect of, it's not our job to tell people what this means. We show them and like they figure it out. And I think there's even the question of like, is that real? Is that real?
Yeah.
Is that the role of journalism, just to be like, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
You figure it out.
Yeah. And then also like it's such a, this is maybe a whole nother can of worms, but like, can journalism be unbiased, right? Like isn't the act of recording something in a way already just like, oh, I cared about this and I wanted to take this for other people to see.
And you are participating in a thing whether you acknowledge it or not, unless you have like an invisibility cloak or something. You are there, you're participating, and your actions can have effects. And to act as if you're not a human writing, a human taking those images. Yeah, because I get confused sometimes when people will be like, I just want an objective news source. I just want objectivity. It's like,
it's impossible.
Well, if you want objectivity on like maybe scientific or mathematical matters, and it could be in like a chart, sure. But even then, but in many ways, like I don't know what that means anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like the nature of journalism is, and always has been historically, and I think we've talked about this on Wisecrack, it is political. I mean, it was from the very beginning. And I kind of like where you were going with this, Evan. It's like when you're making a decision about what to shoot, you make that choice through political eyes.
Yeah.
Like inherently, I think. So.
Yeah, because I said this the other day, and I'm not sure like how much I still like feel like this is true, because maybe I just haven't consumed enough war photography in my life, which is a very odd sentence to say.
Make you feel better.
Like, yeah, but I do feel like it's one of those things where sometimes the photo that is shared the most in these big moments is maybe not the most artistic in a way, but it's because a person was there to get it. And maybe that person could have been standing anywhere, they could have been closer, further, blah, 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 but they chose to be, or for better or for worse, they were there and took it because they saw something that they wanted to archive. And so, or preserve. And so with that, it feels like there is a reason, that, you know, they have a reason for taking it.
Yeah. I was going to say one thing, we haven't talked about this yet. The last 20 minutes of the movie. We veered a little off from the movie. I want to say this in case people are still thinking of seeing it. Pretty incredible.
Yep.
I just want to say that. In the last bit of the movie, we see a siege on Washington, and it's really full on. I mean, actually, to talk about it in homage to Sicario. No, it really does. It has that energy. I really mean that. It wasn't a bit. I'm an earnest guy. But wow. And going from this almost, you know, pastoral filmmaking, interjected with moments of incredible intensity, to this like first person shooter type vibe. I thought was really well done, and I thought the shift was jarring, but in a way that made sense.
Yeah, it really worked. And it didn't feel like it was like, all right, you waited, now here's the show, right? Like the whole movie, it just like build it, you know, it's like you left a candle burning at home.
Yeah.
Like it was just, it was getting closer and closer to possibly being something really dangerous.
And it felt like real. And that I was like,
so
it's like, if it's hard to imagine a siege on Washington, but if it were to happen, you know, it feels like what it would be.
I feel vindicated hearing that, because the folks that I saw the film with did not feel like it felt real. They felt like it felt overblown. They felt like it did not feel, I don't know.
No, you should have said, well, how would you do it? And you start recording, and then you send that to the FBI.
Perfect.
And then that's a fun prank.
I'm gonna start pulling that on people. Great.
All right, so we're gonna hit a few chat questions. Let's see. I like this. Okay, so this goes back to our like kind of alternate timeline, or like not timeline, but like, is this a different country, right? So Phantom 101529 says, the only way I know I'm going to be able to watch this movie is just accepting the idea that this is an alternate timeline, alternate government timeline, because in my head I'll just be trying to figure things out instead of just watching the movie for what it is. Think it's like, I think if you can accept that there is a part of this movie that could be real, that's helpful, but don't get caught up in the details for sure. I think it really just bogs you down. You know?
I don't think the truth of this film is what happens. I think the truth of the film is the idea that certain types of kind of like party-based belief can become these weird religious factions that can lead to like these holy war type things. And I think that's a truth of the film, and I think another truth at the core is what we've talked about, like journalism. But I think that's what matters. I do think most of the rest is just the occasion to explore those ideas. So I think you can easily watch it without worrying about that sort of stuff.
I agree.
Yeah, I think too, like, it's interesting watching this movie and feeling that it was very similar to where The Last of Us 2 ends or is. So like, I won't spoil 2 if you guys haven't played the games, because season 2 will be that. But there is there's a lot of similarities in how I think people decide to conduct their time in the new normal of the world. And also like what you said about religious like ideas, like it is very weird that like suddenly in the second game people are like, oh yeah, we actually all really dig this person because we think they're a religious figure. And it's like, well, it just happened, you know, when the world starts going down. You cling on to these things that you believe in, right?
And a scene we haven't talked about is more they drive through the town that's like a little Mayberry vibe. Because it's Main Street and everything. And everything seems normal, and they're kind of like, what is happening? And then of course Stanley's like, look up there for a second. And we see that the place is like that because it's guarded with guns, and it's people militantly making sure things stay that way. So, you know, you see different reactions to those things and how people take advantage of those things.
100%. Tony Bagel's asking, Garland's movie President needed a compromising Congress and SCOTUS to take a third term. Why did he airstrike citizens? Is there a scenario where federal force would be justified in this way? I don't know. I think that's some of the details where it's like, they just did it.
I mean, I don't want to be too like dark or anything here, but there's there's some stuff in U.S. history.
Yeah.
If one wanted to Google the Tulsa Massacre, and there was a similar thing that happened in Philadelphia at one point where a bomb was dropped.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think we, at various points in history, have seen military and police reactions to various sort of political events that we might have thought of, like, well, that seems extreme.
Yeah, sure.
And you turn up the volume a little more, and I guess and I say to someone, I lived in Baltimore at one point, great city, shouts to Baltimore, where we had a curfew after a series of protests, after the death of this guy Freddie Gray, and there was drone surveillance over the city.
Oh wow!
So I remember like leaving my house, and we weren't allowed outside after like it was pretty early. It was like a week or two, and there was like drones just flying over. Now the drones did not bomb or shoot me, but it gave that sense of like, oh, really quickly things went from like I can go see a movie at 10 p.m. to if I open my window after 8 p.m. a surveillance drone flies by.
Yeah.
God.
So
Damn.
not to like freak people out or whatever, not to say
No, but there is like a on a small scale a precedent for the kinds of things that do happen in this film, and it's like oftentimes we don't see them coming until we're looking back.
Yeah, right. You get caught. I think that like that analogy of turning up the volume 10%. That's so perfect, right?
Yeah.
It's just it's very subtle, but it can just
Yeah, and that's what like art is meant to do sometimes, to turn up and accelerate those things, to sometimes smack us in the face.
Yeah.
With what's really happening.
Yeah. 100%. All right, 2 final questions here. One from Ryan Painter saying, overall, do you think the film has had a positive or negative impact on what it is trying to say? So a little like subjective on what you believe the film's trying to say, right? I think it's I really hate saying this sometimes, but I think it's true in this case where it is like a draw your own conclusions type thing, where I think Alex Garland is really asking questions more than he is presenting answers to them. And I think is being like, let's try to get a little bit more real with this fictional movie, right? And let's try to present you with like a situation, like how are you going to feel? Because we are not war photographers, right? But it is like we are confronted with like terrible images constantly. Like, what will you do? I guess, yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've seen every Alex Garland film, so correct this if I'm wrong, y'all, or chat. I feel like he tends to end his films on notes of just like in a sense of like saying like, well, things aren't looking great, kids. There is humanity. Like he shows us humanity, and he'll show us what humanity can do. But I think overall, at the end of a film like this, Garland's saying something like, "Hey guys, it's not going well."
Yeah. Exactly.
And while I can identify little pockets of humanity and hope, that's the exception to the norm these days. And I kind of feel, I feel like the end of the movie, especially when like the last thing is that quote from the president and getting the final shot, and then we see some like the pictures over the credits of like the soldiers like smiling and laughing with like the dead body of the president, which I think some of those images called back to like Guantanamo Bay, or whatever, or whatever.
There's one specific.
And then also, and I didn't point this out, someone's pointed it out to me, the song that he ends the movie with, and now I'm forgetting the title of it, is the same song that Adam Curtis ends one of his, or that he uses for the main song in one of his documentaries. Adam Curtis, who doesn't know, a BBC documentary maker, makes films about political reality that are pretty bleak, and about how effed up things are. And Garland, Englishman, he has access to BBC iPlayer, a wonderful digital service for those who are in the UK or have a VPN. But part of me is like, was Alex Garland, does he watch Adam Curtis documentaries? Have those documentaries left him with this kind of pessimism towards how power functions? And is he putting this song over the credits to kind of wink at us and remind certain people of that moment? Did you look it up and find out?
I'm trying to find it.
All
right. I've been like furiously like.
No, because I heard that at the end. I was like, oh, I know this song, and then a friend was like, oh, yeah, it's the same one Adam Curtis uses.
Oh, is this Dream Baby Dream by Suicide?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's maybe it's like Can't Get You Out of My Head, the Adam Curtis documentary. He uses that. Someone will know.
Interesting.
At least one of your intrepid chatters, as Curtis said.
Someone in the chat, Xenia Wang, saying they saw the movie yesterday in Moscow. Really relatable to any anti-war Russian, of which there are a lot, and they can't do much but watch things unfold.
Yeah.
Felt like a great anti-war movie, like an almanac of every bad trait war exposes in people as civilization peels off. Yeah.
And that's
That
what
was a
they
really
bring up
great-
because people, some are saying it is an anti-war movie.
I think it's a warning. Like, I think, and that's part of the perspective that it takes is just, again, like Kirsten Dunst's character says, I did all of this, hoping to send a warning back home. I think that's what this film is kind of trying to do for us.
Yeah. And I think it is. I mean, sorry. Not to,
Well, I was just gonna say I think it's effective at that
Yes.
for me anyway,
Yeah.
personally. But
Agreed.
it didn't have to go. It didn't have to work real hard to convince me that that's something to genuinely be concerned about.
yeah.
So,
I guess like to with all that said, I think to answer Ryan's question, I feel like it has had a positive impact of that message, but done in a way that is like you don't feel good.
You don't
So
feel good.
it's positively communicated a fundamentally pessimistic message.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah,
Perfect.
right. Well, here we go.
All right, and then the last question that we'll do here is sometimes on the break room we describe things as fleshy. How fleshy would you rate this movie? I'm saying this movie's got a lot to chew
Wait,
on.
is this segment sponsored by Fleshlight?
Wow, it's funny you say that.
Oh, could you chew on it? Okay.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot to chew on here. It's
fleshy. Wait, is it a number scale or just say how fleshy?
How
in general?
fleshy? Yeah. A lot of meat on the bone.
How fleshy?
Yeah. Wow.
Burns is like, wow, Evan really, he really did level up when he left Wisecrack.
Yeah.
really helping spread good in the world here.
Wow.
So making some good takes,
I'm in awe. I'm
good
in awe.
education.
I would say it's a solid amount of meat on the bone.
Yeah.
It's pretty fleshy, but it's not one of those bites where you're like pulling the piece out to like, because there's so much that you can't chew it. Like you can definitely like, you can't gum this one, but you can comfortably eat it.
God.
So, no,
No, I think it's true. You can't gum it.
No, you know what? Can I say why I'm thinking of gumming? Because people might think
yeah.
something weird.
Yeah.
I have a small child, and she just has gums and no teeth.
Yes.
And she's
I-
starting to eat now, so I have to ask myself, can she gum this?
It's never not
Can
weird, no matter the
gum this?
This is my new streaming show.
Yeah.
Will my daughter gum it, or will I have to hope I can do CPR on stream?
Now that's dystopian. That's
that
dystopian.
is, that's dark.
But yeah, I would say it's pretty. But I think this is one where like, yeah, fleshier than a lot of people are probably saying. But let's not. I don't want to overplay it. It's not the
Yeah.
fleshiest thing.
I'd say
ever.
a 6.5 fleshy because I don't think we have as many emotional stakes with
Yeah.
our characters as we could, and
Yeah,
therefore we don't
yeah.
have to chew on their stuff.
I wanted to say that earlier when you brought up the characters. I forgot. I love the whole cast. I really like big shout out Stephen McKinley Henderson and Kelly Spaney. I think Kirsten Dunst is just like a little inaccessible in the beginning, like a little too like this is war, you know?
Yeah. Although I guess like if that's the world you're living in.
That's true. Yeah.
There is no like behind her eyes.
And I will say
She
I've
is-
actually never seen Kaylee Spaney in anything before.
Oh,
You
nice.
didn't see
Yeah.
Priscilla? I didn't see Priscilla.
I didn't see Priscilla. No.
I'm the only one who saw Priscilla.
I want to. It's
I
on.
wanna see it
It's on streaming now.
Yes, that's right.
But I was really impressed. I'm
great.
excited to see her career blossom.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
really
super
interesting.
cool.
And she worked with Alex Garland previously in Devs, the TV show he did.
Oh.
Yeah.
I never saw that because so many people told me to watch it, and so many Wisecrack audience members, shout out if any of you are still watching, for a while would just comment like, do a video on Devs, do a video on Devs, do something on Devs. And I was just like, don't tell me how to live my life. Oh, and Offerman was in that too, right? Offerman?
Oh, I think he was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Jason Segel. I don't know.
I think it was Offerman.
Yeah.
Also, I'll just say this. If you just saw the trailers and stuff, didn't you think we were going to see a lot more Offerman?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what.
Almost no Offerman.
Almost no offer. Yeah, Dash and I were talking about it earlier. Dash was like, yeah, if you watch the trailer, you see everything. And you actually see him getting dragged out. Which would imply that you would see more Offerman in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to show literally the fourth shot that he's in.
Yeah.
Wow.
I feel like, it's been a great conversation.
It's been really nice.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping by. Do you guys want to plug anything before we wrap it up here?
I mean, like, yeah, if you're, I mean, I am on Wisecrack. We were trying to stay alive. Everyone is in digital media, so if you haven't watched our channel before, check it out. You might enjoy it. If you enjoyed this conversation, you would enjoy Wisecrack.
Absolutely.
If watching this conversation you were like snooze or not, this is too in the weeds for me. Don't. It's fine, and that's okay.
Or give it a try.
No, you don't have to like everything.
Yeah.
And then we
don't.
we stream different, and not at this time. So is it okay if I mention that?
Yeah.
Our main stream is Wednesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific. That's another stream I do at 10 p.m. Pacific. I don't. I'm sleeping.
Wisecrack After Dark.
Yeah, but yeah. So I don't know. Check it out. And Helen's there. Sometimes not as much as she should be, but
Maybe I'll be there more. Say nice things in the chat.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like kind of conversations about movies and you're watching on the Wisecrack channel, you can follow us here on Breakroom, either on YouTube or Twitch. We stream 3 o'clock Pacific most weekdays, and then we move the videos over to YouTube so you can see it again. And make sure you guys follow Wisecrack. You can find them on YouTube and on social media. And thanks guys so much for being here.
Thanks, Adam.
And we'll see you later.
To the chat.
Bye.